Welcome to the November 15th, 2023 meeting of the Pitt County Planning Board. Welcome everyone here tonight. I'm David Davenport. I'm your chairman and your MC for tonight. So first on our agenda tonight, I'll ask Tab to call the roll.
Fred Austin.
Present.
Don Brown.
Present.
Naomi Buck. Here. David Davenport.
Here.
Lisa Ellison. Here. Molly Holdeman.
Present.
Minnie Johnson Anderson.
Here.
Steve Little.
Here.
And Charles McLaughlin.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, we received notice that Thompson, Fords, and Lyman Hardy would be absent tonight.
Great, thank you. Next, I'll ask the board if you will stand for a prayer by Don Brown and then face the flag for a pledge of allegiance by Steve Little.
Let us pray. To Heavenly Father, we humble bow down this afternoon, Lord. We ask you to bless us as we conduct this business tonight. In Jesus' name we pray. Let us all say amen.
Amen.
Raise the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, I'll ask for a motion for approval of the minutes from our October 18th meeting, which was last month.
Mr. Chairman, I say move.
Okay. Okay. Motion and second's been made for approval of the minutes. Any discussion, any changes? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. At this point, we'll ask for any public addresses to the board. This is not in reference to the rezoning, just any public addresses to the board. I don't have anyone signed up. Anyone else? Okay, hearing no one, I'll close that. Thank you. So on our agenda tonight, we've got Mr. Eric Gooby. He's going to give us some info on a rezoning request.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We do have one rezoning request for you tonight. The request is from Glenda Briley to rezone 40.69 acres of property. It's owned by William Garris and Glenda Briley et al. Parcel number is 08422. It's located on both sides of State Road 1534, Old Pactolus Road. And the request is to go from rural agricultural to rural agricultural conditional district in order to operate a sand mine. This is a location. You see it's on Old Pactolus Road. It's just east of the city of Greenville. You see where the green is the city limits, and so the area, or not the green, the pink, I'm sorry. The area in the pink is the city limits. So just to the west of this is Bradford Creek Golf Course. You see it's right near the intersection with Ramshorn Road and US 264. This is a view of the northern site, or northern portion of the site that's north of Old Pactolus Road. You see it's primarily for agricultural use now. And then this is the southern side of Old Pactolus Road. That's the bulk of the property. This is looking towards the east on Old Pactolus if you're heading out towards 264. And then this is the west if you're heading back towards Greenville. These are a couple of adjacent properties. There's a house on the corner there, and in the back there's a cellular company and a cell tower. This is another house that's adjacent to the property. This one's on the southern side of Old Pactolus. Right adjacent to the site. Also adjacent to the site to the west is an existing sand mine. This is operated by a different company though than the one that's requesting the mine for tonight. Then just to the east is also Briley's Farm Market. You see if you look just kind of towards the back down the road, that's where the site is. And this is just a couple more pictures of the site or the Briley's Farm Market property directly to the east. This is an existing RV park that's adjacent to the site on the south. And then there's also another RV park that's adjacent to this, but it's not adjacent to the site itself, but it is within close proximity. And then also, as I mentioned, to the west is also Bradford Creek Golf Course, which is in the city limits. So you see the existing land uses. Just to the west is that existing sand mine. There's also another mine to the north on the north side of US 264 you can see. There's some residential to the south that's more along Sunnyside Road. And then, as I mentioned, there's also the two RV parks, which you see in the green just to the south of this site. The Envision Pitt County 2045, our new land use plan, designates the property as open space conservation. That designation applies to lands that are deemed inappropriate for many development types due to physical or environmental barriers, including high flood risk, and the site is in the 100-year floodplain. As it says, it includes properties within the 100-year floodplain, significant wetland areas, parks, and lands that have been designated for conservation and open space. Primary uses would include timber and agricultural activities and recreation. It may also include limited development that's not in conflict with existing residential uses or significant environmental resources. So again, where this designation is typically located is in the floodplains, conservation easements, and parks. Uses would tend to be conservation, forestry, agriculture, outdoor recreation, and very limited new development, and utility access is limited. The land use plan also has a policy, it's Land Use Policy 4, to encourage quality development and reduce impacts on existing uses, and consider performance-based zoning criteria for certain types of industrial activities, and it specifically mentions these types of uses such as sand mines. To consider supplemental requirements for these types of uses, to specify locational requirements such as separations from schools or dwellings, or specific site standards such as additional buffers or operational setbacks. The zoning in the area is predominantly RA. You can see there's also some general commercial just to the north of the site that's along 264. This district is intended to accommodate low-density residential uses as well as associated public and institutional uses, low-intensity commercial uses, and agricultural-related industrial uses, which are interspersed throughout areas principally characterized as rural in nature. It reflects a diverse nature of land uses within predominantly rural areas, and therefore permits a wide array of land uses. The request is also for a conditional zoning district. As I mentioned, that allows for the approval of a proposal for a specific use with reasonable conditions in order to ensure its compatibility with the use and enjoyment of neighboring properties. The zoning ordinance also has some specific standards for sand mines. In particular, they have to meet a minimum 100-foot separation from the edge of any pit to the permit boundary of the mine. When blasting is involved, it also requires hours of operation. Screening is also required, and when a berm is used, there has to be a minimum of a 6-foot tall berm for screening. They also have to obtain a valid state-issued mining permit. This is the site plan that was submitted along with the request. You see the area kind of dashed in red. That's the boundaries of the site. Blown up a little bit so you can kind of see a little bit better. So again, we have the permit boundary in red. There are 3 excavation areas that are shown on the plan for a total of about 21 acres, a little over 21 acres of actual excavation area. And again, that's also meeting the 100-foot setback from the permit boundary, which is also the property lines. There is some existing vegetation on the site. To the north, on the north side, there's some significant vegetation along the north and eastern sides. It kind of comes down the western side a little bit. And then on the southern side, there's some stands of vegetation along the east and west side, west property lines, and there's some existing vegetation along the south as well. They also have some existing sort of mature live oak trees that are along the road frontage on both sides. There's also some riparian buffers on the site. To the north, it's also, just north of the site is the floodway. None of the excavation area is in the floodway, but as I mentioned, the whole site itself is in the floodplain. So there's a small sliver of riparian buffer on the north, and then there's also a riparian buffer that runs through the middle of the site on the southern side. And then the applicant has also proposed a 10-foot screening berm. Like I mentioned, our minimum is 6 feet. They're proposing 10 feet. To bound the southern end of the northern portion of the property here. So if I can get the arrow to show you. So there's the berm here that will screen it from this neighboring properties as well as the road front. They've also got a berm in the back where there wasn't any vegetation along the backside. And then on the southern portion, they have berms pretty much around the whole perimeter where it's not already screened by existing vegetation. And one of the things not shown on this plan is that the applicant has also proposed to restrict his hours of operation from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So that would avoid any kind of nighttime noise or any kind of disruption overnight. Staff does find the request is consistent with the land use plan. The area requested for rezoning is designated as open space conservation, and the uses in the area predominantly were agricultural. There are limited residential land uses around the site. Land use policy LU4 in the plan, again, also recommends site-specific and/or operational standards for these uses and additional separation requirements or buffering from existing development. Additionally, the site is located within, as I mentioned, very close proximity to 2 existing sand mines. Staff also finds the request is reasonable in the public interest because there is very limited residential development directly adjacent to the site. Additionally, the mine will be screened and buffered from nearby residential properties, and several conditions have been proposed in an effort to minimize any impacts on the surrounding areas. So staff does recommend approval of the request and also recommends the following additional conditions. First, no zoning compliance permit should be issued until a site plan prepared in accordance with the zoning ordinance is submitted to our office for review and approval. They'll need to obtain a floodplain development permit from our office also prior to any development, as well as an operating permit from the Department of Environmental Quality. A 50-foot riparian buffer is required on all stream features. There is one stream feature that is shown as a blue line stream, and they're going to apply to have it have a stream call made to see if it can be exempted from those requirements. So that's not shown on the plan, but if it's not exempted, they will have to amend that plan to show that riparian buffer on that small stream as well. The sand mine shall also operate only between the hours of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and GUC has requested a 15-foot electrical easement adjacent to the right-of-way for the length of the property along Old Pactolus Road. So, Mr. Chair, with that, we'd like to now entertain comments. I'm sure there are several folks here tonight to comment on the request. The board will then make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, and the Commissioners will hold their public hearing on December 18th. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'd like to open up for public comments.
Okay. So yes, we'll open the floor for any public comments. I've got several folks that signed up prior to the meeting, so we'll just start at the top. Just remind you, you have 3 minutes to talk. You'll hear a beep. When that beep comes on, you finish up. Excuse me. State your name and your address when you come up, come up front, speak into the microphone. First, I've got Mr. Wayne Mayhew.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Wayne Mayhew. I live at 2773 Sunnyside Road. We share a property line with the sand mine applicant. My wife and I own Whispering Oaks RV Resort. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a spectacular resort. It's right there at the adjacent property. Whispering Oaks has been in operation for 20 years. We acquired the business 2 years ago, this December. And in all fairness, the park, with its 20-year track record, deserves your careful consideration. The proposed rezoning application for a sand mine will destroy our business and our home value. I invite you to drop by and visit. From the gated entrance to the beautiful trees and the stock fishing pond, the manicured lawn, it's truly a spectacular property. And this mine operation will kill our business. With all due respect, the sand mine applicant has options. We don't. If they come in, it's just a matter of time before we lose our customers and our home value. I brought with me today a bunch of signatures. We have 35 signatures opposing this operation. Our guests come from all over, all walks of life. We have ECU faculty living on our property and temporarily. We have traveling nurses. We have parents visiting their kids at the college. It's a viable, going business, and we care deeply about it. At any given day, I won't get into that. In addition to our park, we have the Mannings next door to us. They also operate an RV park and services your community. People far and wide come to stay with us. And a lot of them don't have choices because the hotels are so expensive in town. So in closing, I'll ask you this. If you were in my position, what would you do? I mean, this is a disruptive business operation. I don't want to take away anybody's right to do business, but picture a day in the life of the trucks running in and out, the loud sound, the excavation. My customers will stop coming. A business of 20 years in the making, it'll kill us. It'll absolutely kill us. I have some logistical questions that I think were already addressed. Reclamation of the property, waterway contamination, roadway damage, operational hours, noise abatement, water table decline, setbacks, and expansion plans. Apparently, the applicant has in the past acquired property and decided to expand and then come and get permission after he expanded. We're really concerned. We bought this property, it was our dream property, it's absolutely spectacular, and it's our home now. This will kill us. Thank you for your time, I appreciate it. Any
Thank
questions
you,
for
sir.
me?
Any questions for Mr. Mayhew?
Yes, sir.
The current sand mines that are in operation, how far are they from your property?
This close.
The current ones?
Oh, the one, he's on the opposite side. I'm glad you asked, because I didn't know that was there until we bought the property. And he's on the waning side of the business, so he's already, I think, finished what he's doing. And we do hear the trucks clacking and banging back there. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have a basis for my argument, because when they're running, you can hear the trucks slamming and cranking and beeping and screaming and yelling. It's loud. But they are apparently on the downside of their business there.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time.
Mr. Scott Pollard?
Good evening, board members. My name is Scott Pollard. I live at 5169 Old Pactolus Road, parcel number 64128. I live right beside parcel 8422 that's in question for rezoning by Joseph Briley and Miss Glenda Briley. I've lived at my location since 2007. I have a small 3-bedroom home where my wife Tracy and I reside. We enjoy the peace and quiet where we live at and the wildlife that come around. We see deer and a bald eagle around our house from time to time. My biggest concern for this rezoning for the sand mine is the noise factor. You see, I have post-traumatic stress syndrome, and the noise of the trucks banging, the tailgates and the excavators banging against the trucks and all the screening will be daunting for my condition. Secondly, my concern is my well water. I have got pictures here showing where my house is proximity, which the planning board committee had already showed. My well is right in my front yard. It is actually 72 feet to that property line where my well is at. If he starts screening and dig deeper than 25 feet, which is where my well's at, I will lose my water. There's no Greenwood utility water there. I will be out dry. I've actually talked to Joseph today. We had a cordial communication about this issue going on, and I requested one condition. If he did this and y'all gave him this zoning permit and he started mining there, if my well run dry, would he pay Greenwood Utilities to run water to my house and put it up? He said he would not do a condition on that. I think that's highly wrong when my well is 72 feet from that property line. Third most is my property. My property value is going to go down, and the sand mine, when it starts up, it will decrease with the mine being there. Ladies and gentlemen of this board, I don't think any of you would want a sand mine operating from 6 a.m. to 8, 9 o'clock at night. It's what Joseph told me today on the phone. It's what his hours of operation will be doing. This restriction that they've put in from 7 to 7, I think is bogus, because once he gets there, he's going to do exactly what he wants to do. I feel a restriction should be from 8 to 5 o'clock. My wife gets home at 5:30 in the evenings, and we want peace and quiet there at our house where we can go out, sit on our back porch, and enjoy the nature that comes around our property. With that, I appreciate y'all, and I hope that y'all can take a stand on this and not rezone. Thank you very much. And if y'all would like to see the pictures, I'll be glad to pass them.
Any questions for Mr. Pollard? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Joseph Riley.
Can I yield to the end to address any questions? Anybody else?
Okay, that will be fine. Stephen Wadford.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My term is going to be short and sweet because I've got a prior obligation that I've got to be at. My concern, I own about my name's Steve Watford. I live at 3065 Sunnyside Road. I own approximately 5 acres there, which has a pond on it. Now, whether it's the sand mine across 264 or the other sand mine that's operating, at some point in time when those mines started, the water level in my pond is never the same. I don't know whether they've hit a aquifer or whatever. The road conditions for Old Pactolas Road, Sunnyside Road, doesn't take much to beat potholes in it. I don't think y'all want y'all's vehicles tore up, and we sure don't. I just think maybe there needs to be some consideration, along with these other people who have a little bit more concern and, a lot more at stake than I do. But like I said, since they started the mining processes on 264 and Pactolas Highway, the water level in my pond doesn't stay the same. We do have some beautiful wildlife. Like Mr. Pollard had said, we've got bald eagles that fly around. Got a nice buck that stands beside the house. To me, that's their safe haven. Nobody comes shooting beside the house. I just wish y'all give it some great thought. And think about, would you want it beside your home? And I thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, I'm having a little trouble reading this name. Kenny,
He's gonna pass. He said he'd pass.
he said he passed, okay. And then Mac Edwards.
Sorry for the handwriting, there's Mark Edwards.
Mark, okay, sorry about that.
I'm a consultant for the Brileys and help prepare the map that Mr. Gooby showing the proposed site.
Okay.
I'm basically here to answer any questions, but just to point out a couple things. If I can remember it all, the water issue will not be an issue. The pumping that's done does not dewater the pit. It's more or less a closed loop system where the water that's pumped, the screen to sand runs right back into the pit. So the water level's the same, no different than if you had a pond with a fountain in it. And the water's coming right back in. So the water table and the well is not gonna be an issue. The mine that Mr. Gooby brought, it is just to the west of it. I checked today, it was permitted about 19, almost 20 years ago. And if I'm not mistaken, there was a pit before that, several years before that. So any noise concerns or any loss of business, I would think would have already happened. This isn't gonna be any noisier than the pit that's there now. I can answer any other questions if it pertains to the permitting part.
Any questions?
Any questions that they had brought up that I may have forgotten?
So if that pit continues to get bigger and it will fill up with water, that does not pull any water off any adjacent?
No, it would if some operations pump water off-site through proposed and approved measures into a neighboring stream, and that would lower the water table. This one is not gonna operate that way. It's gonna pump, and the water's gonna get used to wash, screen the sand, and run right back into the hole that there's being dug out of.
Okay.
And also, and Mr. Bright can speak a little better to this, in terms of property values and that kind of thing, this is gonna be a short permit. The one that's there now has been there more than 20 years, and he can speak a little bit better to this, but I believe this one's only gonna be a short-lived process, 2 to 3 years, and then it's gonna be out, and then you're gonna be left with a pond that will attract the deer and the birds and everything. And I can come back up if there's any other questions.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor?
Yes.
So is what you just said about 2 to 3 years, is that in the conditions somewhere, or can we?
Well,
We're
once,
looking for the
if this
future.
gets approved, I have not done the application for the state mining permit. When we get to that part, we have to state in that permit how long we propose it, and it can be stated then. And if it needs to be a condition, I can't specify that. The Browleys and Mr. Gooby would have to work that out.
But once they get that permit and they put a time limit on it, at the end of that, they can also reapply for a longer time, is that correct? On the
You
mining
can
permit?
reapply.
Yeah, okay.
So the current sand mine that's there, is it about to,
I don't
Go
have
out?
any
I heard
involvement in
somebody
that, but I believe it's actually still operating and right directly beside one of the RV parks, just to the west of it, I believe. Even maybe as recent as this week, I believe there's excavators running. I haven't seen it myself, but I believe that they are currently operating right now. Directly, this proposed property is to the north. There's a property line, the current pit runs, as Mr. Gooby showed, just to the west of the proposed one and to the west of the RV park. It runs all the way between the two roads, Pactolus and Sunnyside.
thank you, sir.
I have one more question. It is related to the time that you're expecting to ask for the permit. Why is it seemingly a short period of time? Do they expect not that much sand?
Again, the
coming out
Browleys
of
could
it?
speak better to this. I believe they have some upcoming expecting contracts that will need a significant amount of material to help them work through it quicker than the neighboring site is. I'm not sure what kind of company they are, but evidently they're taking a longer time to excavate the material. This is also a much smaller site than the neighboring one too.
Thank you.
All right. Joseph, you want to come up now?
My name is Joseph Briley. I stay at 4483 US Highway 264 East, out on the 4-lane. Starting with the timeline for us digging sand off this piece of property. It's a small 40-acre site in total, with 20-some acres we can dig. It's a property owned by my mother, my aunt, and my uncle. And we're going to dig this to bring in income from them because they're older people and they need additional income. And by what I mean about not digging as long, the contracts that we have bids on for next summer, which is some county projects and stuff, we look at the material that's going to be coming out of there. Half of that property is going to be dug pretty quick in the summertime or less. So we will also be bringing cement sand out of there and asphalt sand to like ST Wooten or DPD. And with the material that they get from us on a yearly basis, our projection is no more than 2 to 3 years less than that. It all depends on, people say, how long are you going to mine sand? I don't know. It depends on my clientele to come to buy the sand. But what we have bids on and what people have been done in the past where we're selling now, we're looking at probably 2 years. Could be less. Depends on the bids on the projects. And as far as the existing mine that's there now beside the RV park, they're digging today in there. They have excavators in there digging today.
You don't know them or?
It's Island Construction, Island Grading and Construction.
Okay.
It was a Harvey Lewis pit to start with, then Island bought it. Harvey sold it to us at one time, then we sold it to Island. And that was before we were mining sand, but he's been digging in there ever since. I think it's 25 years the sand's been coming out of that pit. So,
Have you had a geologist examine the grade, the substrate and the quantity of sand that's there?
I haven't had a geologist, but I have. We have drills that we can check core samples.
So how many, theoretically, you say you're looking at, again, we're looking at this time permit. Theoretically, how many years could it truly go if you had continued contracts?
Yeah, I would say no more than 3 years if we didn't win the contract for the proposed projects that are up and coming in the industrial park. Yeah, 3 years or less. I'm on a 40-acre site now, and we've been there this is the 4th year, and we're about to dig out there. So that can give you an idea of how long it takes to dig up.
Do you have a reclamation plan?
It's required with the permit.
So what sort of plans do you have after the
It'll be
line?
sloped, when it's finished, the banks will be sloped, grassed, it'll look like a lake.
Do the
But-
berms go down?
Yeah, the berms go down, everything will be flattened out. They asked for a 3-to-1 slope. We'd probably do less, so you're able to mow it down around to the water. And, you know, after 2 or 3 years, they're worried about dust and noise, you know. Water doesn't make noise, and there won't be anything else there but water, other than the buffers that will be mowed.
One more additional question
Yes,
perhaps.
sir.
What is the relation to Briley's Farms to you?
Which Briley Farms are you asking about, the produce stand or the Briley Farms, the farm?
Well, forgive me for being ignorant on that. I'm assuming they were one and the same.
No, they're different. Briley Farm, Produce Farm is owned by my cousin and my cousin's sons. Briley Farms is my uncle. He tends beans and tobacco. He's on Cherry Lane.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And if you were to get future contracts, of course, the term would go longer, right? I mean,
No, when you
you're-
dig out, I can't make sand, you know.
Okay.
We dig generally on between 25 to 28 foot deep, and that's the reach of an excavator. And normally you're digging in water, and I'm not pumping water off site. We don't have I forgot the term it is for, we have to get a permit to pump off site. We contain all our water. You know, we want water. So we dig down as far as the excavator will reach, which is generally speaking around 25, 28 foot at the most. And the water table stays the same. Yeah. And, you know, during the summer, as well as David knows, he's a farmer, you know, summertime, the water table goes down because of the trees and stuff. They always, the old people say sap rises and lowers underground.
What size berms will you have around there?
They require 6 foot, but we normally do 10. I'll do higher, you know. I go 15. We use the berms to slope the banks back. So, I mean, we're gonna wind up using it anyway. Even when we close the pit down, we're gonna use it. But I understand the sites and the dust and all that. That's why we try to berm around the houses. A lot of times we'll berm all the way around the property. Yeah, because that's a safety issue too. And the roads will be rocked. We have a water truck that wets the path down. And anything, silk fence will be put up, so to keep anything from going off site. The general regulations and the rules and stuff we had to follow with the permit, that's what will be implemented. Because I got neighbors too. I got to deal with my neighbors.
What about the hours of operation?
Yeah.
So, someone, I think there was a mention, you were gonna say 7 to 7, is
Yeah,
that
when,
correct?
Mr. I think it was Pollard called me today, I was specifying with him, it says hours of operation 7 to 7. And that's generally our hours, but I mentioned to him, my guys get there around 6:30, and they check the oil, do the routine inspections on the trucks and the loaders and grease the loaders and all that. So they get started around 7 o'clock loading trucks. And our hours in the afternoon, as you know, David, being a farmer, you have daylight savings times, and in the summertime you have longer days, and in winter months the days are shorter. So if you say 7 to 7, that's kind of an in-between of your daylight. Your sun goes down in the summertime around 8, 9 o'clock. You know, a lot of times you can see, and in winter months, you know, it'll be dark at 5, 6 o'clock. So 7 to 7 work for us, and the only time that we might veer from that is if, like, we have a contract with a company such as Fred Smith that wants to do a foundation project, and they're on a timeline trying to get the dirt out as quick as possible, they might want to run later, 8, 9 o'clock, sometimes later, but, if it's implemented to 7 to 7, they just have to stop at 7 o'clock, But where we're at now is my family's around me. Kent's my cousin, he lives right beside me. It doesn't bother him, the noise, as far as the backup alarms and all that. And the berms and the trees help for that. That's the purpose of the berm, is to cut that down. And the equipment nowadays, honestly, they're run a whole lot quieter. And as far as the trucks banging their tailgates and stuff, most of that comes when you're dumping. But we're gonna be hauling mostly out, not in. When the trucks come in, they're not gonna be dumping dirt. We're gonna be hauling it out.
Anybody else got any questions?
Yeah, so is your intention to retain all of the existing vegetation that's around the sites?
Yeah, well, I think, in the most part, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. The only place that might be is, on the north side, there's one corner that we might take some vegetation down that's in the permit, but, and if all else, if I can, I'm gonna try not to dig as much on the north side. I told Mr. Pollard today, I'd rather not dig the north side of the road unless I absolutely have to. Cause we're gonna be right back here, after 2 to 3 years with another piece somewhere to dig, because that's what our company requires, the sand to supply the companies in Greenville.
And did I understand correctly, Mr. Gooby saying that you would be trying to get an exemption from the Tar-Pamlico buffer regulation?
Well, I think there's 2 ditches, on this property. One's already been, exempt. The other one hadn't been looked at. So we're gonna require or pay for them to come out and take a look at, see if it can be exempt or not. But either way, it don't make no difference to us. If we have to stay back, we'll stay back.
Thank you.
And as far as wildlife, I have a 40-acre pit there where we're digging out now, and there's 200 geese on the water in the morning and 40, 50 ducks all day long. And we have deer walk around the pit every day. So, matter of fact, me and my son hunt right behind Miss Pollock's house.
And that's not a danger, the pit is not a danger to the,
Nah, it's just tracks to wildlife.
Any other questions?
My question is, I heard you say 7 to 7,
Excuse me?
but then you said 7 to 7, but I heard you say something about sometimes it might be a little later. In what way can you assure your neighbors that it's 7 to 7 and not to tell them that they had to do this until 9, 8, 9 o'clock? So what is the assurance to the
Well,
people
if
that are
that's
here
the
tonight
stipulation-
and my
I'm sorry.
vote?
Yeah, if it's the stipulation to work to 7 to 7, that's what we'll do. And then, where I'm at now, there's not a stipulation with our operation. So when someone comes in and says, can I haul till 8, 9 o'clock? And I say, fine, And then like my cousin or somebody, if he calls me and say, hey, you make a lot of noise, we shut it down. But, there hadn't been an issue. And in his house, I can throw a rock from where we keep our trucks and stuff. So he doesn't have a problem with it. And like I say, after we're dug out there, they'll have a nice pretty lake behind their property with wildlife. And there won't be any more, activity there or neighbors.
Any other questions? Okay, Joseph, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else would like to speak before we close the public address? Anyone? All right, I'll declare that closed. Mr. Gooby, I have a question. So as far as the hours of operation, I think I asked you this earlier. Who monitors that?
We would. If we got a complaint, we would investigate, and if we find that he's operating outside of his hours, if there's any kind of evidence that he's operating outside of his hours, then it would be a violation. We would issue notice on that.
And what happens after that?
Well, basically, he would have to correct it, and if we would give him a certain amount of time to correct it, to come back into compliance with our regulations, and if it's not corrected, then we could fine him and assess civil penalties towards him until he gets into compliance.
Has that had a good outcome in the past?
Typically.
Because I believe that we heard something a few months ago, and there's still a situation. So how do you really make sure that these conditions are met?
Well,
I mean,
typically.
these are, I don't know how to, I guess my question is, how do you value his parents' money over these people's money?
Sure, sure. And that's why our recommendation is based solely off what the land use plan recommends. We don't, rather than what, we're not looking necessarily at, we're trying to make recommendations that would kind of appease both parties and come to some kind of mutual agreement as to how it could operate. But to get back to your question about the operation and the violations, on the code enforcement side, we're primarily a complaint-driven operation. So if 6 months from now, if it's approved and he's out there operating, and somebody complains he's out there operating at 9, 10 o'clock at night or in the middle of the night, we'll investigate it and we'll check it. And if we find that he's been operating, like I said, we'll issue notice of violation. Now, in terms of the general requirements, like just the other conditions, say the berms and the screening and whatnot, we do fairly regular inspections of these sites. We do about every 2 years, we're doing inspections of all. 1 year we'll do all of our conditional rezoning sites, and the next year we'll generally do all of our past conditional use permit or special use permit sites. So we're checking on them fairly regularly, and if they're not in compliance, then we bring it up to them and give them an opportunity to get it back into compliance. Yes, sir.
This is based on a conditional permit, right?
Yes, sir. It's a conditional district rezoning, correct.
So if it's violated, like you said, to get back in compliance, could that permit possibly be pulled?
Well, our ordinance does allow for permit revocation, so if
And that
it's.
determines on what?
Well, it just depends probably on the severity of the violation. And if it's a repeat violation, like if he's for repeatedly finding him in violation for things, then yeah, we could probably pull the permit. But typically, we're gonna go through the process of trying to get him into compliance first, and then kind of proceed from there if it warrants kind of moving up the chain and going a little bit further to permit revocation. That is an option. That is in our permit or our ordinance that we can revoke a permit if necessary.
Because I know that has to be some other standards than just saying, I keep telling you about, you gotta get in compliance.
Yeah.
So sometimes you gotta show it.
I have one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
He had 35 people that was against it. Is there any number of people that's for it out there, and any number, names?
I'd ask them. I'm not sure.
That's my question.
We didn't put up a petition to go around and find it, but even the fellow that, Mr. Mayhew bought his property from, he's for it.
He needs to come to the podium. He needs to come up here to get it on record.
I can get names for you.
Joseph, can you step up here and just say that so we have it on the record?
I said, we didn't send a petition out, didn't think we needed it, but, we do have people that is for it. And such as the fellow that owned the, RV park before Mr. Mayhew bought it. He owned it for 22 years, and he said he never had a problem with the existing sand mines beside it. And I spoke with him, and he doesn't have an issue with it, and I'm pretty sure other people is. I didn't make a point to go around and ask people were they for or against it. I sort of figured it would come out in the meeting. And I knew some people had some concerns, but that's why I'm here today, is address their concerns and your concerns.
That's why you're here, but I'm saying the people that are up here, it would have been really an appropriate, I think, idea for you to do that, so we could see both
Yeah, well, I
sides.
plan on having people here, and if it's approved and it goes before
Okay.
the county commissioners.
Okay.
I have companies that buy from me and people that they need it, so. That all?
Yep. Any other questions?
I do have one more question. Mr. Gooby, is it possible to pull that map back up that you showed us? Because I wasn't able to go on the field trip on Monday, and I wonder where these neighbors, where this RV park is and where these particular neighbors are in comparison to this property. to
Might be
this
better
parcel.
just to, if I can pull up the existing.
Yeah.
So this property here to the south, you can see the arrow on the screen? This property to the south is Whispering Oaks, it's Mr. Mayhew's property. He owns, this is the RV park, and this is his house in the middle here. The Manning RV park is here. So they weren't notified by mail, they're over 700 feet away. So we only mail notices out to people within 500 feet. So that's their property, and then Mr. Pollard's house is up here, I believe. And then you have the Briley Market here, the farm market, and then have a few other houses here. There's about 3 other houses. I think Mr. Briley's brother owns 2 of them up here. And then I'm not sure, there's another gentleman owns this one, I don't believe is here tonight.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
And the buffer that would be between these properties, the houses and the RV park, what is the requirement for that?
The requirement is 100 feet to the excavation. So the area of excavation, the edge of the pit has to be at least 100 feet from the property line.
And for screening, is there a requirement for screening?
Yes, they're providing the berm, which is one method of screening, but the ordinance does require screening of some type. Yes.
Thank you.
I have one more question. On that north side, where is the driveway?
There, I'll show you on the site plan here.
Thank you.
So the driveways are on the eastern side. They try to locate them away from the residences on that western side.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? So, Eric, can you pull up the last screen so we can see what we're voting on?
Yes, sir.
Or potentially voting on? In the conditions, yes. Okay.
So there's 2 pages of conditions. The first, and if you want me to read through them again, sir?
Yes, that
Okay.
would be great.
So again, our recommendation is approval with additional conditions. Those conditions as proposed are that first, no zoning compliance permit will be issued until they submit a final site plan to our office for review and approval. They'll need to also obtain a flood development permit from Pitt County Planning Department prior to development, again, because the entire site is in the floodplain, so they have to have a permit for that. Also, their operating permit is required by the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality. That's their mining permit itself prior to any work on site. 50-foot riparian buffer is required on all stream features on the site unless they provide proper documentation either from DWQ or our office showing that it's exempt from the TARPAM buffer regulations. The mine shall operate only between the hours of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and they will also need to provide a 15-foot electrical easement for GUC adjacent to the old Pactolus Road right-of-way for the length of the property. And this is also in addition, again, to the requirements, the mining requirements themselves in the ordinance that will also be required.
Would you back up one page?
Yes, sir.
The operating permit, sorry. Is there a time limit or term limit that's involved in that permit?
It's based off whenever the state issues it. I don't know that they have a time frame. In fact, Mark or Joseph might be able to speak a little bit more on that.
But I mean, as far as the
Well,
time-
they can't start digging at all until they have that in hand.
Okay.
And we'll have to have a
But
copy.
is that permit for a certain length of time?
I think it's probably for the amount of time they stayed on their application, which is what Mr. Edwards was saying. They have to state on there how long they're gonna dig. I think that's kind of their,
Do we know that number?
they stated in their comments tonight about 3 years, 2 to 3 years.
And that's what I heard, that's what I'm trying to, okay.
Could you explain what might make something exempt from the tar Pamlico buffer regulations from you or from the county or the
Sure.
Division
So
of Water Quality?
if it's considered what we call a blue line stream or perennial stream, it's shown on either the USGS topo map as a stream or on the Pitt County Soil Survey as a stream. Our staff will go out, and Jonas can speak a lot more about this because I don't do the stream calls, but our staff is authorized to go out, just like DWQ staff can go out and look at it, and they can identify certain characteristics of it and determine whether it is in fact a stream or not. And so I don't, like I said, Jonas can speak to the specifics of what they look for, but when they do that evaluation, if they find that it doesn't meet those character, or doesn't have those characteristics, they can exempt it and say it's just not a stream, it's not subject to the buffer requirements, and they'll issue a letter stating that. And so if that's exempted, it's noted in our system as being exempted on our GIS system, and then we'll put it in the file. They won't have to provide the buffering on the site plan for that. And I can show you real quick just what the, you can see it on this southern side. There's a little stream that kind of comes up and hooks in. Is this little piece right here. And so again, it's showing up on the topo map as a blue line stream or perennial stream, but it probably isn't. It's looks like an old farm ditch, so it probably would, there's a good chance it probably would be exempted if I had to guess. But like I said, they'll have to go out and do the site visit on it and make that call.
All right. Anything else? I think we've rolled this around enough. What's the pleasure of the board? Do I hear a motion?
Based on the criteria that we have to work within in the envisioned Pitt County 2045 land use plan, and with the things that I've heard that when I listen to the neighbors and then I listen to the property owner, to be fair to each, and based on what we have to do at this particular time, I move that we do grant approval at this time.
All right.
Conditional approval.
Okay, a motion has been made to grant approval with the conditions that we just followed here. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Second?
Yes.
Yes, second. Motion has been made to approve conditionally, and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, raise your hand.
5 to 3, it passes.
5 to 3, motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just
Thank you.
want to remind the folks that are here tonight or might be watching this on television, again, this is just a recommendation to the board, to the Board of Commissioners, and their public hearing will be December 18th. And so we'll send out mail notices to everybody within that 500-foot buffer as well. And if anybody in the audience tonight wants to be added to our mailing list, we can add them as well. If they just contact us and we can add them to our list.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
great, thank you. Next on the agenda, Jonas Hill. Can you give us some informational items and such?
I'm gonna pause just for a minute if anybody wants to leave.
Okay, all right.
All right, good evening, board members, Mr. Chairman. Couple of informational items tonight. First item being the commissioners, staff presented to the Board of Commissioners at the October 16th Board of Commissioners meeting on the Neuse River Basin Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan. That presentation just included some highlights of the progress that we've made of the goals and objectives for that hazard mitigation plan. Being a part of the NFIP, the National Flood Insurance Program, we are required to report on those activities that we've done outlined in that plan. If anybody's interested, we have that report. We can email it to you. Just let me know after the meeting. We'll be glad to get that in your hands. Also, at the November 20th Commissioners meeting, the Commissioners adopted a resolution supporting NCDOT's designation of the Southwest Bypass in honor of our former Senator Thomas F. Taft, Sr. That resolution just basically outlined the accomplishments that Senator Taft had, and that will be forwarded on to the Board of Transportation, and they will ultimately have the say-so on whether or not to formally name that Southwest Bypass after Mr. Taft. Also, at the November 20th Commissioners meeting, included in your package is a proclamation supporting National Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week. That is this week. The Board of Commissioners adopted that proclamation. We had a good turnout showing a lot of regional support for homelessness as well as hunger in Pitt County. And our department has been instrumental in trying to address those two issues here in Pitt County. Also included in your agenda is the departmental monthly report for October. Hopefully you can see all the good things that our staff's doing for Pitt County in that. If you have any questions regarding that, feel free to ask. Also, there's some other correspondences in your package. There's an article, or actually two articles, I think, regarding the community centers that had their groundbreaking since our last meeting. One north of the river at the county office complex, the other one at Alice King Park off of County Home Road in the southern portion of the county. So real excited that those two projects that were funded through the ARPA program and seeing that construction beginning. So that's all I have, other than you should have received a gift in your seat when you came. We appreciate your serving on this board, and we were unsure at the time when we decided to give those out at this meeting whether or not we would have a December meeting, so we wanted to go ahead and get them in your hands. However, Eric has informed me that we will have a December meeting, so go ahead and pencil in planning board meeting in December. I know it's close to Christmas and the holidays, but we do have one item that will, at least one item that will have to come before the board, so we hope to see you then. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Jonas. Any other comments from the board or from the department staff?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to, I don't know if it would be a form of a resolution from the board, but to keep in mind the passing of Edith Warren, and keep them, their family in your prayers, as just as a matter of record that I think we should consider the accomplishments that she has for our region.
Thank you, Mr. Austin. Absolutely. Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks.